I can't believe Star Trek's new movie did Spock vs Khan from Into Darkness again. Star Trek, Section 31's ending hinges on a pair of climactic fight scenes waged over the Godsend, a galaxy-destroying superweapon from Star Trek's mirror universe. As Emperor Philippa Georgiou Michelle, you battled San James' Hiroyuki Liao, her teenage flame from the Terran Empire, who came back to haunt her. Alok Omari Hardwick went mano a mano with Fuzz Sven Rygrok. Star Trek, Section 31 revealed Alok is actually a genetically engineered augment from the 20th century, while Fuzz was a nanokin, a microscopic organism controlling a Vulcan robot. Section 31's Alok vs Fuzz fight rehashes Spock vs Khan from Star Trek Into Darkness. Incredibly, Star Trek, Section 31's Fuzz vs Alok Sahar fight is a twisted remake of Spock vs Khan in Star Trek Into Darkness, with another Vulcan exchanging fisticuffs with an augment. Of course, there are differences. Alok is one of Section 31's heroes, while Fuzz is revealed to be a mole working with San to conquer the United Federation of Planets. This is the inverse of the heroic Spock battling Khan in Star Trek's alternate Kelvin timeline 23rd century San Francisco to apprehend the genetically engineered criminal. Still, the vengeful Fuzz is as ferocious and emotional as Spock was in Star Trek Into Darkness. Unlike Khan, however, Alok Sahar was fighting to protect the Federation. The Vulcan-shaped machine and Section 31's superpowered human leader were as evenly matched as Spock vs Khan were in Star Trek Into Darkness. Unlike Spock, however, Alok ultimately killed Fuzz's Vulcan form, and the Section 31 operative did it on his own, whereas Spock had the help of Lieutenant Nyota Uhura Zoe Saldana to beat Khan. Star Trek Into Darkness, ending with a brawl between Spock vs Khan, was the final straw for many Star Trek fans who took issue with J.J. Abrams' Star Trek sequel. Zachary Quinto's enraged Spock, who wanted to avenge the death of Captain James T. Kirk Crispine, was a bridge too far from the cool and logical Vulcan originated by Leonard Nimoy. Spock throwing punches and trying to beat Khan to a pulp was a gruesome spectacle that was wildly out of character for Spock, even if it was because Kirk died. In Star Trek Into Darkness's defense, Spock vs Khan made sense logically. The Vulcan's strength and endurance are a better match for Khan's superhuman brawn than Captain Kirk, who fought the augment in Star Trek, the original series. There was, indeed, a novelty to Spock vs Khan. Still, audiences balked at Star Trek Into Darkness's marketing outright lying that Benedict Cumberbatch was playing Khan, and the Star Trek faithful groaned when it turned out J.J. Abrams remade the beloved Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Section 31's Alok could be an interesting spin on Khan. If Star Trek, Section 31 gets a sequel, it will hopefully further develop Alok Sahar's backstory and motivations for leading Section 31 Alpha Team. Alok told Emperor Georgiou that he was born in the 20th century and was turned into an augment by Geary the Marked, one of the genetically engineered warlords of the Eugenics Wars. Alok fled Earth with most of the augments after the Eugenics Wars, and he was in cryosleep until he was awakened sometime before Star Trek, Section 31's 24th century. Star Trek has a few heroic augments, like Dr. Julian Bashir Alexander Siddig in Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, and LT. Commander Una Chin Riley Rebecca Romijn in Star Trek, Strange New Worlds. Alok, however, is from Khan's era in Earth's brutal past but chose to protect the Federation with Section 31. Alok Sahar is as if Khan Noonien Singh himself were seeking redemption for his past sins, which is something he has in common with Emperor Georgiou, and this is a Star Trek, Section 31 story worth exploring further. When I sat down for Star Trek, Resurrection working title, but let's be real, it fits too well. I was ready for anything: time travel, dimension hopping, even Chris Pine's Kirk wearing another tiny space beanie. What I wasn't ready for was Spock vs Khan again. And not just a subtle nod. Not a clever twist. No, this was practically a shot-for-shot redo of the brawl from Into Darkness, only somehow bigger, louder, and even more drawn out. Watching it happen was like a déjà vu fever dream. I sat there, mouth agape, half convinced I had been sucked into an alternate dimension where originality had been outlawed. The setup. It's the 23rd century again. Khan has escaped again. He's angry at Starfleet again. The writers, bless them, clearly think the third time's the charm, because not only does Khan show up with an identical plan to reshape the Federation through violence, he even monologues about it using what sounded suspiciously like recycled Benedict Cumberbatch dialogue. Spock, in full logical but emotionally tortured mode, confronts him on a collapsing orbital platform. If you're picturing the speeding cargo ships from Into Darkness, you're not wrong, except this time, the background is exploding debris fields and angry lightning storms. It was like they took every cool sci-fi backdrop and mashed it together just in case we didn't notice they were reusing the entire concept. The fight? There's a moment, about 40 seconds in, where Spock tackles Khan exactly the way he did in Into Darkness, punching him with the mechanical precision of someone who has done this before because, well, he has. Khan, of course, throws Spock through several CGI walls. And then they crash through a glass ceiling in slow motion. In case you needed a flashback reminder, yes, this mirrors the Spock crashes Khan through the ship's control room beat for beat. Even the musical score teased it. Right as Spock lifts a shard of broken hull plating to use as a shield totally new, the orchestra swells with a reworked version of the Into Darkness Spock v Khan battle theme. It was like being lovingly whacked over the head with a nostalgia bat. Why this feels so wild? Here's the thing, Into Darkness already got roasted for rehashing Wrath of Khan back in 2013. Fans grumbled that Star Trek's most iconic story was being Xeroxed without the emotional gravity that made the original work. So to see this movie redo that movie, which was already redoing another movie, it's like cinematic inception. It's a copy of a copy of a copy, and somewhere along the way, the soul got lost. It's not even like Khan needed to be here. The first half of Resurrection actually set up a fascinating original villain, a rogue Vulcan cult leader manipulating reality using quantum entanglement, very Trek, very fresh. But halfway through, the writers panicked, hit the Khan emergency button, and suddenly it was back to rage punching through spaceships. You could almost hear the executives screaming, "People know Khan. People like Khan. Put him in, even if it makes no sense." The audience reaction. The theater was a roller coaster. When Khan first appeared, there were gasps, some excited, some confused. By the time Spock was shouting in controlled Vulcan fury while leaping across collapsing space scaffolding, you could feel the audience split into two camps, people who thought it was the coolest thing they'd ever seen, and people who were quietly groaning into their popcorn. One guy behind me muttered, "Again?" Seriously? So loudly that a ripple of nervous laughter ran through the whole back row. Could it have worked? Honestly? Maybe. If they had leaned into the ridiculousness of it. If they had said, "Yes, this is a fourth wall breaking meta moment, we know, just come with us." Instead, the movie treated it with grave seriousness, like we wouldn't notice the creative recycling if the stakes were high enough. There was one tiny sliver of brilliance. Near the end of the fight, Spock does something totally unexpected. Instead of beating Khan into submission, he uses a mind meld mid-battle, overwhelming Khan with thousands of years of Vulcan history and forcing him to surrender peacefully. It was such a raw, mind-blowing Trek idea, using knowledge and empathy as a weapon, that it almost redeemed the whole scene. Almost. Final thoughts. I love Star Trek. I love big, bold swings. I even love risky nostalgia plays when they have something new to say. But seeing Spock and Khan clash again without truly evolving their conflict felt like a glitch in the Matrix. Star Trek has 60 years of stories to pull from. Entire galaxies of possibilities. And yet somehow, here we are watching Spock punch Khan in the face like it's 2013 all over again.